How can one anonymous note change my whole life? I'll make it short. I never thought something like this could happen to me, but when you get to the end, you'll understand everything. The summer heat in Melrose, Georgia, always arrived like a drunken uncle, loud, unwelcome, and impossible to ignore. But it was our home. After 11 years of marriage, the routine had become a habit. Mondays began with Marissa brewing coffee and me putting our 4-year-old daughter, Edie, in the back seat of the Camry. I would drop her off at preschool and then head to the parking lot. Life had its limits, but they were familiar. Predictable. Our life had a rhythm, even if the melody was starting to sound off-key. The car dealership was modest but stable, built on reputation and handshakes. I was proud to run an honest business in a town where everyone knew your name and remembered your grandfather. Marissa worked part-time at the library and volunteered at school events. She always knew what to say, and people loved her. Maybe too much. One of those stifling Tuesday mornings, as I was going through the mail with half-asleep eyes and a stale donut in my hand, I found an envelope. It wasn't a bill, it wasn't a coupon, just a brown manila envelope with my name written in large, curly letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an anonymous note written in blue pen, advising me to take a closer look at my wife's Thursday afternoons. At first, I laughed. Not out of laughter, but out of denial. The kind of nervous laugh a man makes when the doctor orders more tests. I threw the envelope on the table, next to the coupons and overdue bills. But that evening, when Marissa laughed too loudly at her phone during dinner, I noticed that I was looking at her longer than usual. Her hair was still tied up from work, strands falling down like ivy. I used to love that look. Now I hated it. Because suddenly I couldn't remember the last time she looked at me the way she looked at the screen. She was telling a story about parent-teacher conferences, laughing at a part one didn't get, and her eyes were shining as if I wasn't part of it. Eddie laughed too, unaware that her dad was lost in thought, watching his wife act out her joy as if she were on stage. I should have ignored it. I should have trusted her. But when you hear noises in the house at night, you check the locks. And I started hearing noises. I couldn't sleep that night. While she was dozing nearby, breathing evenly and deeply, I stared at the ceiling. Her phone rang on the nightstand. She didn't move. But I did. The light from the screen illuminated the room so much that I could see her peaceful face, and I hated her a little for how easily she slept. The next day, I pretended everything was fine. I smiled at breakfast, kissed Eddie on the forehead, waved goodbye to Marissa, as if I wasn't drowning in suspicion with every step I took toward my Camry. During lunch, I checked the note again, rereading every word as if they could turn into something less accusatory. By mid-evening, I decided to check it. I said that on Thursday I might go to Atlanta to look at some cars at an auction. She smiled and said, "Okay, honey, drive safely." No questions. No hesitation. And for some reason, that scared me more than if she had objected. I didn't know then that I was already too late. The cracks weren't just appearing. They had already broken through the foundation. I was living in the aftermath of an earthquake, pretending that the walls were just shaking. I didn't drive to Atlanta Thursday morning. I parked my car 2 streets down from our house, let the engine idle until the heat made the window sweat. I told the guys at the lot I was handling something at the DMV. Nobody asked questions. I was a business owner. Autonomy came with the title and with it, a quiet sort of loneliness. Marissa left the house just after 11 a.m. Her hair was up, red lipstick applied with surgical precision. She wore the blue sundress I used to say made her look like a postcard from Charleston. It still did. But now I hated that postcard. It felt like it had been mailed to someone else. I tailed her in my car like I was in some low-budget detective show. She didn't notice me, didn't expect to. I followed her to a small white craftsman house just off Maple. Not a storefront. Not a friend's place I recognized. She parked in the driveway like it was routine, stepped out of the car, and didn't knock. Just walked in like she lived there. I waited 30 minutes. Then 40. At the 50-minute mark, I couldn't take it. My stomach felt like it was filled with gravel. I parked across the street and waited. A red truck pulled into the same driveway. A man got out. Athletic, maybe early 40s. He didn't knock either. I snapped a picture. Then another of them through the front window, silhouettes crossing paths like shadows that knew the dance. I didn't need to see more. I drove back to the dealership, hands trembling the whole way. I could still hear Addie's voice from that morning, her little fingers tugging at my sleeve, asking if I'd be back to read to her that night. Of course, sweet pea, I had said. That promise burned a hole in my chest now. That evening, I sat in the garage with a bottle of Jack and the photos open on my phone. I studied them like they were schematics for a bomb I didn't know how to disarm. Funny thing is, betrayal doesn't come with sirens. It arrives like carbon monoxide, quiet, odorless, deadly. I took another sip and tried to remember the last time Marissa had looked at me without that thin layer of contempt. Maybe Addie's 3rd birthday? Maybe never. And that's when it hit me. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Just this cold, clear understanding. I was nothing but paper. Husband on paper. Father on paper. A man with a name on a mortgage and a child support obligation soon to come. A life constructed out of documents, all of it flammable. I scrolled back to the anonymous note and reread it again. Check Thursday afternoons. They had known. Someone had known. And they had given me a gift I didn't ask for, the truth. I didn't go home that night. I drove until the gas light came on and pulled into a rest stop just outside of Dublin, Georgia. Slept an hour in the car, windows cracked to let in the southern air, thick as soup and just as suffocating. I woke up to the sound of birds and the taste of regret. Coffee from a vending machine. Burned my tongue. Didn't care. At sunrise, I texted Marissa, auction was long. I'll be back by dinner. She responded with a thumbs up emoji. I stared at it for a long time. That was what our marriage had boiled down to, emoji acknowledgement. On the drive back, I caught my reflection in the rearview. Red eyes. 5 o'clock shadow that had turned into 9. I didn't look like a man anymore. I looked like a warning. By the time I stepped through our front door, Addie came running. Daddy! I dropped to my knees and scooped her up, clutching her so tightly she squirmed. You okay, Daddy? Yeah, I lied. Just missed you. Her hair smelled like apple shampoo in childhood. I kissed her forehead and held on longer than I should have. Marissa watched from the kitchen with that same mild, distant smile. The kind you give a neighbor you don't really like but need to be polite to. My heart didn't crack. It just went silent. Later that night, I stood in the bathroom brushing my teeth when I saw a pink toothbrush that wasn't mine or Addie's. Different brand. Too new. I picked it up like it might bite me. My heart pounded against my ribs, not from anger, from clarity. Someone had left behind their tools. I placed it back in the cup beside mine. 2 soldiers standing side by side. One didn't belong. Dinner was quiet. Addie talked about school, drawing hearts on her placemat with ketchup. Marissa smiled, laughed even, like this was a sitcom and she was reading from a script. I chewed my food like cardboard. Said little. Thought a lot. You okay, hon? She asked halfway through. Long day, I said. Lot of traffic. She nodded. But something flickered in her eyes, a brief, panicked scan. Like a dog that hears a car backfiring and wonders if it's thunder. After Addie went to bed, I sat on the porch with a beer and a plan. Marissa came out and stood by the railing, arms crossed. Everything okay? Peachy, I said, sipping. She hesitated. You seem distant. You seem busy on Thursdays. Her eyes snapped to mine. What? I took another drink. Nothing. Just an observation. She tried to smile. It didn't work. You being weird. There was silence. Then a soft, defensive huff. If you have something to say, say it. I stood up and looked her dead in the eye. I saw you. Maple Street. The blue sundress. The red truck. I saw everything. Her mouth parted slightly. She blinked once. Twice. Then smiled. Not regret. Not apology. A smirk. So what? That did it. My blood didn't boil. It froze. That 3-word phrase shattered every hope I didn't know I was still clinging to. The woman I loved wasn't just gone. She never existed. I laughed. Not loud. Not long. The kind of laugh you give when your car dies in a rainstorm and all you can do is sit there and listen to the radio until the battery fades. So what? I repeated, nodding. You always had a way with words. She turned and went inside. Left me standing on the porch like a ghost in my own life. That night, Addie knocked on my door. I was sleeping in the guest room by then. She crawled into bed beside me without asking. Mommy said you two are fighting. Are you gonna go away? I didn't answer at first. Just held her. No, sweet pea. Not going anywhere. I hadn't spoken to Marissa for 2 days. Not because I was angry. That would have taken too much energy. It was more like mourning. Mourning for a person who was alive and well, combing her hair in front of the mirror, drinking coffee in the morning, humming to herself in the kitchen, just like she did when we were in love. But now every sound that came out of her mouth sounded like a cover. A familiar melody. A fake soul. I threw myself into work. I bought a few beat-up Subarus at auction to keep my hands busy and take my mind off things. There was something honest about rebuilding a wrecked car. Cars don't lie. Pads don't manipulate. If something's broken, they let you know. No games. Just a clunk, a squeak, or a loud bang of metal calling for help. Meanwhile, at home, my wife was rearranging the battlefield. New scented candles. Different decorative pillows. A new set of wine glasses. I could see it clearly, she was preparing our home for a new chapter, but she had forgotten that I was still in it. On Thursday, of course, it was Thursday, I came home early. The house was too quiet. Eddie was gone. There were no cartoons playing in the background. Just Marissa on the couch, her laptop open, that same blue dress folded on the armrest, as if she were resting from all her sins. Where's Eddie? I asked. At Mom's. I thought we could talk. Talk? Or confess? She sighed. Why are you doing this? What am I doing? Asking questions in my own house? Her lips tightened. This isn't supposed to be a war. No, I said, putting down my keys. But it's not a wedding anymore. She turned away. And in that moment, I knew she didn't regret it. Not the cheating. Not the lies. Not dragging me into a fatherhood that wasn't mine. The only thing she regretted was getting caught. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water because I needed to feel its weight in my hand. She followed me. I didn't plan this, she said. You didn't plan to get caught. He listens to me, she said quietly. He doesn't make me feel worthless. And he doesn't have to pay for your daughter, I blurted out, too fast, too loud. She flinched. And then, and I'll never forget this, she cried. Not sobbed. Not wailed. Just one tear rolled down her cheek, as if it knew the way. And for a moment, I felt like a monster. Like I had hurt her. I didn't want Eddie to be a battleground, she whispered. She's not a battleground, I said. She's the only reason I didn't burn this house down. We stood there, the silence thick as concrete. And then, from somewhere inside me, from some numb, dry place, black humor burst out. You know, I said, setting my glass down loudly, this is starting to feel like when you order a steak and they bring you a wet paper napkin and charge you extra for the plate. Marissa blinked. What does that even mean? It means, I muttered as I left the kitchen, that if I charged for every piece of shit I swallowed this year, I'd have a yacht. That night, I slept in the Camry, reclining the seat and wrapping myself in an old flannel blanket I kept for emergencies. It smelled like gasoline and stale coffee, but it was mine. The next morning started like any other lie. I went inside to shower, change clothes, act like a man who slept indoors. Marissa was in the kitchen frying eggs like nothing had changed. Like we were still some Norman Rockwell painting instead of two strangers playing house. You heading to the lot today? She asked. Eventually, I muttered, buttering burnt toast. You should eat better, she said. I looked at her, dead in the eye. You should cheat better. That shut her up. For a moment, I thought she'd cry again. But instead, she picked up her purse and left. Like she had a schedule to keep. At 10:12 a.m., there was a knock on the door. Not the kind of knock you get from friends. This one had weight. Slow, deliberate. I opened it to find a man in a dark polo and khakis. Clean shave, clipboard in hand. Not a cop. Worse. A process server. Mr. Hanklin? Yeah. He handed me a thick envelope. You've been served. Have a good day. He turned and walked off like he just delivered me a pizza instead of the legal equivalent of a shotgun blast to the chest. Inside the envelope, a petition for child support confirmation. Filed by Marissa. Filed. Not threatened. Not discussed. Filed. I dropped into the recliner like someone had cut my strings. My heart was pounding but my hands were calm. That scared me more than anything. I flipped through the paperwork, eyes scanning terms I couldn't emotionally process. Presumed father, established financial contributor, stable household. I wasn't reading a legal document. I was reading my obituary in real time. I laughed. Just once, but loud. It bounced off the drywall like it didn't belong to me. Because there it was. Not only was I expected to raise a child who wasn't mine, I was now legally shackled to it. I texted Paul, my business accountant, and told him to come by the lot. We needed to talk. Then I sat there, staring at Addie's crayon drawings on the fridge. Rainbows. Stick figures. A crooked heart labeled Mom plus Dad. My eyes burned. That afternoon at the lot, I met Paul in my office. I laid out everything. The affair. The paternity test. The paperwork. He listened quietly, then finally asked, "You want to burn it all down?" I shook my head. I want to rebuild. But I need to be the one laying the bricks this time. Then we start by moving assets, he said, flipping open his laptop. I watched him like he was a surgeon cutting a tumor out of my financial body. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't stuck. I was cornered. And cornered animals don't freeze. They fight. That night, I picked up Addie from Marissa's mom's house. She ran to me like she always did. Jumped into my arms like nothing had changed. And I knew, as surely as I knew my own name, whatever happened next, she wouldn't be collateral damage. Not if I had anything to say about it. Back home, Marissa was waiting. "I see you got the papers," she said, arms folded. "I did," I replied, calmly. She raised an eyebrow. "No explosion? No shouting?" I smiled, slow and sad. "Oh no, Marissa. Explosions are messy. I'm going with precision now." And for the first time in weeks, I saw something new in her eyes, fear. The fear in Marissa's eyes that night should have felt like victory. But it didn't. It felt like staring at a smoldering house you once called home, too late to save, too early to walk away from without turning back. The next few days moved like honey. Thick. Sticky. Slow. I avoided her. She avoided me. Addie played in the middle, unaware that every bedtime story I read her was being narrated by a man barely holding his soul together. Paul helped me hide assets. We shifted property titles. Adjusted business paperwork. Reclassified vehicles into fleet accounts. By the end of the week, I had buried every cent I could beneath layers of LLCs and ledger codes. Marissa wouldn't get the lot. She'd get the lot's shadow and a note that said, "Try harder." But I couldn't prepare for what came next. Saturday morning, I was in the shop, polishing the hood of an old Chevelle we were restoring for a collector in Savannah, when the bell above the office door rang. I wiped my hands on a rag and stepped out. "You Nathan Crowley?" A tall woman in a blazer stood by the counter. Thin lips. Clipboard. "Another one." "I guess that depends," I said. "If it's about the Camry warranty, I don't do refunds for emotional damage." She didn't smile. She handed me a thick envelope. "You've been named in a paternity-related filing in the state of Georgia. This is not a criminal case. You have 60 days to respond." My blood went cold. "Another one?" I whispered, almost laughing. She nodded politely and left. Back in my office, I ripped the envelope open with fingers that didn't feel like mine. It wasn't Marissa. It was Melanie. Melanie from before Marissa. From way before. A wild summer in Athens. Long before the car lot, before the mortgage, before the little girl drawing crooked hearts. She and I had parted ways fast. I remembered loud music and a broken ceiling fan. And now, apparently, a child. I stared at the name on the form. Zoe Lane Parks. Age, 10. The dates lined up. I leaned back in the office chair and stared at the ceiling. Life had a sense of humor. It didn't chuckle, it cackled. 2 kids. One not mine. One maybe. Outside, the sun beat down on the cracked pavement, and my crew joked around while unloading an old Impala. It should have felt like any other Saturday. But I wasn't in the world anymore. I was floating somewhere above it, watching a man get punched in the face by a past he thought had been buried under time and tequila. Later that night, I sat in the Camry again. I didn't sleep. I just scrolled through old photos of Athens, looking for Melanie's face. Found one on an old alumni group. She was holding a little girl. Blonde. Freckled. And damn if she didn't have my nose. I whispered to no one, "You've got to be kidding me." The universe didn't answer. It never does. It just hands you the next page and waits to see if you'll keep reading. And I would. Because now? I had more to lose. Or maybe, just maybe, something to gain. You don't expect your future to show up in Converse sneakers and a nervous smile. But that's exactly what happened. Melanie contacted me 2 days after the documents arrived. A simple message: she wants to meet you. Only if you're ready. Was I ready? No. But readiness is a luxury you lose when your life is already in flames. We agreed on neutral territory, Playfair Park, a few miles outside Macon. I got there early and stood by the duck pond, an awkward scarecrow in a shirt I hadn't worn since my brother's wedding. And then I saw them. Melanie spotted me first. Her eyes locked on mine the moment she came into view, no hesitation, no doubt. It was as if she had memorized my silhouette from 1,000 dreams and knew exactly how I stood when I was nervous. Her expression changed: shock, warmth, and something like guilt flashed in a single breath. She waved her hand almost imperceptibly. And next to her, half a step behind, was Zoe, Melanie's 10-year-old daughter. A child I had never seen before, but whose existence had just rewritten my past and, quite possibly, redefined my future. Blonde. Freckled. Holding a sketchbook. My heart didn't break. It swelled and burst at the same time, like a dam that had burst after a long drought. She looked up, squinted in the sun, and asked, "Are you Nathan?" I nodded, not knowing what kind of voice would come out if I tried to speak. "Mom said it might be you. You look like me. It's a little strange." I laughed softly. It sounded like relief with a hint of weakness. "Yes," I finally said. "I guess we both have crooked noses." She smiled. We sat down. We talked. About little things. About school. About our favorite movies. About why duck poop smells so bad. Zoe was smart, quick-witted, a little too observant for a 10-year-old girl. Her eyes scanned the room as if she were constantly drawing it in her head. "Do you like to draw?" I asked. She nodded, lifting her sketchbook. "Sometimes I draw things before they happen. Like dreams that spill onto paper. I drew you once. A year ago. Mom didn't know." I froze. "Can I see?" She flipped through the pages. She found the one she was looking for. A man on a bench by a pond. His face in shadow, but the profile? Mine. "Why did you draw that?" She shrugged. "I dreamed you were waiting for me. You looked sad. But not sad in a way that lasts. Sad in a way that wants to go away. That was it. The moment that completely broke me. 10 years of doubt, guilt, confusion, and here was this little girl who never knew me, seeing through the armor I didn't even know I was still wearing. I turned back to Melanie. "Is she mine?" She nodded, her eyes misty. Zoe looked at us. "Is this good or bad?" I reached out and touched her palm. "This is the best thing that's happened to me in a long, long time." She smiled as if the sun had just risen in her chest. That night, driving home, I didn't feel lost. Not completely. Chaos still awaited me. Court battles. Marissa. Mess. But now I had a reason to fight my way through the wreckage. And what kept me afloat? It was the picture Zoe had drawn. It was lying on the seat next to me. Proof that somewhere out there, even in all this chaos, someone else was waiting to find me too. You'd think clarity comes with joy, but it doesn't. Not always. Sometimes clarity arrives in the form of a weight one you're glad to carry, but one that still bruises your shoulders. The week after meeting Zoe, I floated through life like I'd been caught in a warm rainstorm. It was messy. Unpredictable. But it made everything else seem cleaner. I visited her again, this time just the two of us. We walked the park trails and talked about books, monsters, and whether space was scary or beautiful. Maybe it's both, Zoe had said. Like people. That night, I sat in the garage and pulled out the old baby photos I once kept in a drawer for Addie. It felt wrong. Not because I didn't love her once, but because that love had been folded so many times it tore. And just as I felt some sliver of peace, the past shoved its way back in. I got the call around midnight. Melanie's name lit up my screen. I answered immediately. Nathan, her voice was tight. I need you to come. Now. Zoe's in the hospital. My heart stopped. She explained as I grabbed my keys. Zoe had collapsed at school. Breathing problems. Panic. Maybe an allergic reaction, maybe something else. They didn't know yet. She was stable, but scared. I don't remember most of the drive. Just the blur of traffic lights and the way the road seemed to stretch longer the closer I got. When I got to the hospital, I found Melanie pacing the waiting room. Where is she? Room 3. They're running tests. She asked for you. Those 4 words hit me harder than any punch I'd taken in my life. I walked into that room, and there she was, my daughter. Wires on her chest. And 4 in her arm. But her eyes lit up when she saw me. Hi, she whispered. Hi, sunshine, I said, taking her hand. You scared the hell out of me. I'm okay, she said. Mom said you'd come. That night, I sat beside her bed until dawn. Doctors came in, nurses moved quietly, machines beeped. But all I saw was her. Her hand in mine. Her breath slowly evening out. It turned out to be stress-induced asthma. Severe but manageable. Triggered by anxiety, not environment. And that's when it hit me, she wasn't scared of her health. She was scared of us. Of being torn in pieces between adults with too many secrets and not enough grace. Melanie sat across from me in the hallway outside the room, eyes red. You okay? I asked. No, she admitted. But I'm glad she has you. I didn't respond right away. Then I pulled out the old sketch Zoe gave me. She dreamed of this before she met me. That I was waiting for her. I can't explain that away. I won't lose it now. Melanie nodded. Then don't. The next morning, as Zoe slept peacefully, I stepped outside into the cool dawn air and made the call. Paul? Yeah? Get me a lawyer. Family court. And tell him I'm not negotiating. The lawyer's office smelled like new carpet and cheap coffee. It was clinical, just like everything else about family court. Paper over people. Policy over pain. I sat across from a man in a gray suit who talked like a calculator. Your position is strong, he said. You're the biological father, stable income, emotionally bonded. But be ready for testimony. These things can turn on perception. Perception. There's that word again. My life had been built on perceptions, others of me, mine of myself. Husband. Father. Business owner. Solid. Predictable. I wasn't any of those things now. I was a man with a past full of bad bets and worse silences. I drove home and sat in the Camry, thinking about the ghosts I carried. Not the ones in photos or papers. The ones in my ribs. I had failed before. Failed to ask the right questions. Failed to see the truth in Marissa's eyes before it shattered me. I stayed when I should have walked. And I walked when I should have fought. There's a quote that says, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." I used to believe that. But lately, imagination had nothing on my reality. What haunted me most wasn't the betrayal. It was how easy I made it. Zoe deserved a father who showed up from the start. I wasn't that man then, but I am now. And sometimes, being the father who refuses to leave is the only kind that matters. A week later, court day came. Melanie sat on the other side of the courtroom, her expression unreadable. Zoe stayed home. This wasn't her fight. I testified. So did Melanie. And so did him, the man she almost gave Zoe to. He wasn't cruel. Just attached. But love without truth is a lie with good intentions. When I was asked why I wanted custody, I didn't talk about rights or DNA or paperwork. I just said this. She drew me before she met me. Said I was waiting for her. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. She found me. I'm just doing what any father would do, staying found. There was silence. Then questions. Then more silence. I didn't win full custody. But I won what mattered: joint custody, legal paternity, and shared time. More importantly, Zoe knew. She knew I fought. When I picked her up that Friday, she hugged me tighter than she ever had. We sat on a park bench and watched the sun melt over the pond. "Daddy," she said, for the first time. And everything inside me stopped. Then restarted. I used to think forgiveness was something you gave others. But maybe it starts with yourself. Maybe it's saying, "Yeah, you broke. But you didn't stay broken." In the rearview mirror of my life, I see a long road of wrong turns, stubborn detours, and missed exits. But right now, I've got both hands on the wheel. And Zoe's laughter in the back seat. There are fights you walk into knowing they'll scar you. Some scars are maps. This wasn't a victory story. It never was. It was a survival story, the kind you tell not because it ends neatly, but because it matters. The funny thing about betrayal is that it doesn't always arrive as a knife. Sometimes it's a slow unraveling, a thread you pull without knowing it's the seam that held everything together. And healing? That doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in mornings when you don't hate the mirror. In laughter that sneaks up on you. In a child calling you daddy like the word was made just for your name. Zoe and I don't have a perfect life. But we have an honest one now. We garden. We dance in the kitchen. We argue over cereal flavors. She draws me with a full smile now, no more shadows over my face. And Marissa? She's a name I whisper only when I need to remember what not to settle for. We still pass words when needed, when it comes to Addie. But that chapter's closed, and I stopped rereading the pain. To anyone who's been gutted by someone they trusted, you're not weak for loving. You're not foolish for hoping. You are human, and heartbreak is part of the cost of that. There's an old quote that says, "Ruin is the road to transformation." I used to think that was poetic nonsense. Now I know it's a compass. If you're reading this, maybe your world is on fire. Maybe you've got your own paper chains, those thin promises that tear the moment they're tested. If so, here's what I'll leave you with. Don't confuse quiet with peace. Don't call surrender maturity. And never, ever believe that loving someone more than they deserve makes you less than you are. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness, it's the bravest kind of wisdom. So hold the wheel. Face the road. Scars and all. And if you ever find yourself broken, just remember, you didn't stay broken.